Hi, I'm Robert McBride of All Classical Portland, a radio station you all know and love and listen to, right? Yay, thank you. And this is Carlos Kalmar, the music director of the Oregon Symphony.
Good evening tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
It's not too bad. All right, so he's not really Carlos Kalmar, music director of the Oregon Symphony. He works here. He works behind the scenes. What he does is very important to all of our enjoyment of the concert and even the ability of the concert to happen. Any guesses what his function might be?
Ticket holder.
He's not a ticket holder. Piano tuner, no.
Not the
Good
piano
guess.
tuner. That was a good one, though.
That's a good guess. Not the sound engineer, but that's getting closer.
Dialing in on it right there. What? Oh, no. Nope, I do not have that illustrious choice of occupation.
I'll give you a hint. He is very light of spirit. He does the lighting.
My name's Justin Dunlap. I'm the master electrician and department head stagehand electrician here at the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall.
But Justin is not the name that you typically go by.
It is not. It is not. A curious name came about over the years. Everybody calls me Jiggy. So that's I don't have it on right now. That would have been perfect.
Do you have a Jiggy name tag?
I do. I have a P5 name tag that says Jiggy. When they gave out the name tags, I walked up and mine said Justin, and I almost cried. I said, did I do something wrong? They said, oh, here. They took it back, and about 3 days later, one came back that was printed that said Jiggy.
That's excellent.
Jiggy.
Yeah, Jiggy. All right. So I don't know anything about running lighting in a concert hall like this. Tell us, what do you do? How do you do it?
You try to keep the lights out of the musician's eyes, and you try to keep it on their paper. That's the gist of it. One of the other things that is important is the concertmaster takes the cue to tune for the second half off of a lighting cue. That way we don't have to have a person out there telling her or somebody giving her a hand signal. I just bring up the lights that are right beside the ones that are on us right now, and when those come on, she knows that the stage is set, the house is ready, all the musicians are on board, all the technicians are ready to go ahead. So that's when she stands up and signals Marty to tune for the A.
And when there are other kinds of shows that would involve more elaborate lighting or even something as simple as follow spots,
Yeah.
if you have a dancer or a singer you need to be following around, do you do that?
I do. I'm the resident lighting designer for the hall and for the symphony. So like if you come to see one of the specials, or if anybody comes to Back to the Future, the movies, things like that, all the lighting that goes along with those, I'm in charge of, and I signal the spotlight operators, and they're very, very good at their job, and they cover me for the most part. So while I'm paying attention to the lights and making the colors chase and bringing up the specials on the soloists, they also help me a lot by being very, very good at their job. They're consummate professionals.
Colors chase, in other words, change to follow something?
So when you see the lights flash from one color to another, or slowly fade from a green to a red to an amber to a purple, that's a chase, the sequence of lights going from A to B to C to D, back to A to B to C to D. You can pre-program a lot of that so that you're not doing so much of that on the fly. Used to be it was all on the fly. You had a bunch of buttons and you just mashed, and it sounded like a keyboard. It sounded like somebody typing a letter when I was running lights, because every button corresponded to a different set of lights coming on at a different color at a different time rate. So, oh, thank God he's here.
Oh man, this was just getting interesting. Well, it's good that since Carlos was late, that Justin was here just in time.
Grüß Gott, Maestro. How are you, friend?
Hey, my friend.
Well, it was great talking to you guys. Enjoy the show.
Hey, come on. It's more fun when you're here.
Thanks, Justin. Jiggy. So as you could tell, what I said, he's got a very light attitude. He's always delightful backstage. It's always great to see him, and and he does good work. And he told me he'll be doing some festivals and things over the summertime, and get to work outdoors in the gorge and do a very different sort of lighting. And you know, since Jiggy and I came out, I didn't get to tell any conductor jokes before you got here.
Okay, go. I go. Come on.
But you know, maybe you'll be late tomorrow. Who knows? So you've been busy, working hard.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these are two very big weeks. The ending of the season tonight, next two concerts, and then Mahler 3. That's a little.
A little wisp of a symphony.
Yeah, that.
Boy. So, once again, I feel like I've said this many times. Once again, I want to thank you for bringing us something tonight that I've always wanted to hear in concert and never have, and that's Mathis der Mahler, the Symphony by Paul Hindemith, which is so powerful. Actually, I've never heard the Schumann Genoveva Overture in concert either, come to think of it.
Well, actually, the Mathis der Mahler was played by this orchestra during my tenure time.
Yeah, somebody else conducted, and I was
Yeah,
traveling.
It
or
was
something.
Michael Stern, and it was something like 2004 or 2005, around that time. But Mathis der Mahler at least was here.
It's in. Oh, according to the program, they do keep track of things like that.
Uh-oh.
I spent some time on the internet today looking at photographs of the artwork that inspired the opera that this symphony relates to, that goes back to the 1500s. And wow. For one thing, that altar piece is huge. And it's got all these different paintings, and it's got different doors on it, so they can open it in different configurations to show different aspects of the whole Christ story at different times. And wow, have you ever been there and seen that thing?
No, because the altar itself, you can see it. It's one of the few remaining paintings by Matthias Grünewald, Mathis Grünewald if you want, that actually exist. There is not so much that survived, and unfortunately or not, it's in Kalmar, and Kalmar is
Not Kalmar.
not Kalmar. Well, even if it would have been actually, I was in Kalmar once. It's
There's a
city,
Kalmar?
Yeah, there is a city in Sweden called Kalmar, and
But it's Alsatian wine country. So you got two good reasons to go there.
I know. But as far as wine country, why should I go to?
Oh, right.
I mean, I
Save a whole lot of airfare, couldn't you? Anyway, you've got this information in your program notes about the artist and this altarpiece, and you really should look at the pictures when you have a computer in front of you or your phone or something, because it's just awesome. And it inspired some pretty awesome music.
Well, the thing is that this opera by Paul Hindemith is actually a really, really good piece. The problem is that, first of all, it's Paul Hindemith. That means that people do not associate Paul Hindemith with opera music at all. And second, Mathis der Mahler requires a large cast. It's pricey to put it on stage, and I think that impresarios, opera directors all over the world, whenever it comes to an opera that requires a very large cast, which means a lot of money that goes into that, they have to think whether the outcome will be enough tickets sold, and that's where you get a problem, because I've never, I think, when I even was working 16 years in Germany, seen a theater, an opera house putting out Mathis. But I've seen other opera houses putting out, for example, I saw several of them, putting out the Lady Macbeth by Shostakovich. Large cast, smaller roles though. And I think operas like the Shostakovich opera are absolutely the top of everything. They are absolutely the world. The audience was like, I mean, actually, no, it was not like that. It's like always. The people who came were like, oh my God, I need to see this again. But not everybody came. Right. And so Mathis der Mahler, on top of that, Mathis der Mahler has, the opera itself has a libretto and a story behind it that is very in a way, for me, a kind of philosophical approach to art in general, which is a painter who is famous, who works at court for aristocrats, and in the 15 or in the 1400s, and then sees around him the Peasants' War, that was a historical event. Peasants' War was 30 years long. And it was the uprising of the peasants against the feudal system and then against aristocracy. And after 30 years, they lost because the people with money actually bought soldiers and defeated the peasants. Anyway, so there is this painter, and the painter says, I cannot be a painter and paint nice things and live in my own world if there are people dying out there for a probably good cause. So he goes out to join forces with peasants and is absolutely appalled by the brutality. And then he has, at least in the opera, he has a vision. And the vision tells him, go back and paint. Because that is, your calling actually is not fighting. Your calling is painting.
I love that life lesson there for all of us. We all have our role to play.
We have all our role to play, and his was to paint art. And in the end, that's what he does. And I just think that tells us, as you said it tells us a lesson. There is a place for everything, and maybe the expression of an artist, even if the artist wants to say something in regard as a comment to things that happen at the time, just say it through your artwork. You don't need to go and join forces. You don't need to go on the barricades and give interviews in television saying whatever you want to say.
And that's what Hindemith was doing when he wrote this opera, and the Nazis were starting to do really obnoxious things, and he didn't like it.
I mean, there is very clearly also this message, or the reason why he wrote this piece has something to do with the uprising of the Nazis in Germany, because Hindemith, who was not Jewish, but his music was not exactly what Nazis could even understand. And
therefore, it must be bad.
Therefore, it must be banished. And then, while he was writing the opera, Wilhelm Furtwängler and the Berlin Philharmonic came to him and said, can you please write a symphony for us with themes from the opera? I mean, Furtwängler said that. And so the symphony was written before the opera was finished. And the symphony actually utilizes 3 paintings that are in this Isenheim altar piece. And there are 3 movements, and each of them is very different. So the first movement is the Concert of the Angels, bright, singing mood, brilliant. The second is the Entombment, quite short, slow, dark, has a very slow feeling of a funeral march, although it's not a funeral march. And the last one actually is the key movement in any case, because it's the vision of St. Antonius, and essentially it has something to do with the painting on one side, and probably it's also a reflection of the vision that in the opera the painter has, that tells him, go back, go paint. And essentially what happened back then was that Furtwängler was warned, but don't support Hindemith. And Furtwängler said, I don't care, I believe in this music, we are playing this music. And soon thereafter the Nazis declared the music of Hindemith unplayable and it should be banished because Hindemith is one of those and he supports Jews, and well, unfortunately the usual story. And the opera is really good.
And the symphony
and
is
the symphony is
powerful.
Absolutely fantastic.
Some of it has this ancient, timeless quality to it. It almost takes us back to the 1500s somehow. Great flute solos. You must have a happy principal flute tonight.
Oh,
And then the power and grandeur in the end is just awesome.
I mean, there is a lot of choral work in this, because what you said about this feeling of ancient is, it's actually something factual in the music. It's not what you hear harmonically, it's what you hear melodically, because you're going, and just to give you one hang about that, the symphony starts very quietly. It's like very slowly the sun is rising or something like that. It's a peaceful feeling you get. And then the trombones start a melody. And that melody is very old, just really old. A sung in triangle. Three angels sang a wonderful song. It's the translation. I don't know if it exists in English. And Hindemith just works with this theme, and the harmonization is modern. It's Hindemith, after all. And there are more songs. In the end, there are many of them.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah.
The first piece on the program is also related to opera, also written by a German composer not associated with opera, an opera overture by Schumann. Schumann wrote an opera.
He wrote one opera.
He even conducted the premiere, I read.
Yes.
I wasn't there, but I read that he conducted the premiere. And he was not, like Brahms, whose music is coming up tonight, he was just not a dramatist. He tried, but...
You know, this
But the
thing
overture's
with
good.
being a dramatist or not being a dramatist, I don't know. Yeah, sure, you have to have a certain dramatic touch in order to write a successful opera, and Schumann was not one of them. But I think, all in all, it's probably still worth to look at the piece. Because it's, after all, this is Schumann. Now, the critics of that time, especially Eduard Hanslick, reviewed the premiere of the opera and said, not good. But the overture is very good. That's what he said.
So that's still what we believe
And
today.
that is still the only piece of music that on occasion you will hear in concert halls, on rare occasion. And as we know from the concert notes, this is the very first time the Oregon Symphony plays this overture in 119 and 3/4 years. It's about time, because ultimately, I must tell you, this is stunningly good Schumann, the overture. And it has, now, there is an absolute anomaly with this overture, which is usually an overture in an opera has something to do with the opera. Meaning, the standard is that the opera sets the mood. The opera very often utilizes things that later are going to be in the arias and God knows what. No. Schumann wrote the overture first. First he writes the overture, and then he writes the entire opera, and the opera is about something else. However, sort of. However, one little thing actually is similar in opera as well as in overture, which is, if you know actually what the opera is about, meaning the plot, then you realize, okay, actually the overture has that. So this is not a really modern story. It's not something you want to, I would say, it's not something you can see today and saying, wow, that speaks to me. So it's the story about a married couple. He's a count, something like that, and he goes to war, very far away. And he leaves his wife, his young, beautiful wife, kind of, and tells his friend, please take care of her. And this friend is really not his friend, because he tries to seduce the woman, unsuccessfully. But because he's unsuccessful, he spreads the rumor that actually he succeeded. And husband comes back, is of course very angry, and I'm going to not only divorce you, I'm going to have you executed, stuff like that.
It really doesn't speak to me, you're right.
And then a lot of things happen, including sorcerers and stuff. And at the end, a mute child solves the issue, and the couple is reunited, and they lived happily ever after.
Aww. That's so sweet.
Yeah, and the thing that I refer to, it's in the overture starts a little bit in darkness, then goes into drama, and ends in absolute triumph. Absolute, great. So if you want, yeah, it has something to do with that.
Okay, Schumann, Hindemith, dabbling in opera, both of them. Intermission, wine, whiskey, conversation, whatever you want. Brahms, Piano Concerto No. 2 with the magisterial Garrick Ohlsson. Big piano concerto. Both of his concertos are huge. Well, all three, because the violin concerto is huge too. When he wrote a concerto, he wasn't kidding around. They're like these huge symphonies.
That is what Brahms does.
Yeah.
When he goes for the big form, I'm not going to brief and give you 10 minutes of this.
I know you love the guy's music.
Well, just listen to what we are going to play today.
Do you think you would have liked him based on what you've learned about Brahms the man?
As a human being?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because a lot of people didn't.
I don't think I would have liked him because eventually, look, it's very simple. Brahms is a musician.
Through and through.
I'm a musician. That means that somewhat, if we would have met, our path would have crossed, and I just wouldn't, he just would have said.
Yeah, that could be. He was not real generous in praise.
Yeah. Brahms once left, he was once at a party and gathering, and then he left the party by saying to everybody, if I have forgotten to insult somebody in the room, I apologize. Very Brahms.
I think I do like the guy. I was interested to read that Brahms performed both of his piano concertos as soloist many, many times, and the last concert that he gave as a conductor, he conducted this second piano concerto. So I tend to forget about that he was a very active music maker, not just a composer.
Well, yeah, he was very, very active, and I mean, of course, he must have been a very skilled pianist in order to play. This is a beast. Regardless of the fact that Brahms, once he was done writing the second piano concerto, he wrote to his friend Elisabeth von Herzogenberg, I just finished a tiny piano concerto with a wisp of a scherzo, knowing that actually he has just written the longest piano concerto today.
With this big dramatic scherzo movement.
And the scherzo is really dramatic.
And then there's that gorgeous cello solo in the slow movement. You know, I mentioned the violin concerto by Brahms. He got grief for having the beautiful oboe solo in the second movement while the violinist stands around. And then the same thing happens in the slow movement here. This beautiful cello solo takes center stage, and then the pianist shows up eventually. I don't know if he's just deliberately being contrary or just being creative or just making wonderful melodies.
He's creative because to some extent, I mean, of course, I look from it, I look at it backwards, meaning I see the end product, and I have had the honor of conducting this piano concerto so many times. And I just think, well, who else is going to play this solo? It has to be the piano. It wouldn't sound, even with an absolute phenomenal pianist like Garrick.
That melody is a cello melody.
It's a cello melody, sorry. Yeah, it's
That's
what
good
it
stuff.
is. But the great thing actually is I mean, working with Garrick, I mean, there are so many happy faces on stage. Because the orchestra absolutely, and we absolutely love this man. And we never know whether things are being the same or similarly good in a performance. We don't. But my impression about his playing, not for the first time, is this is how it has to be. I mean, yeah.
That's a great compliment.
This is no question.
Enjoy the concert. And table in the lobby is covered with CDs of all this music and Garrick Ohlsson. Buy something, and the Oregon Symphony. Buy something on your way out. Thank you, Carlos. Can we do this again tomorrow?
We will do that, and yeah, I
All
will
right.
be here.
Carlos Kalmar.
Robert McBride.
And Justin. Thank you.